Okay, so this is a story about a single, crucial eyewitness account. It was a moment that really should have solved a mystery. But you know what? Instead, it created this puzzle that would haunt the justice system for years and years.
And that one observation, that one haunting moment, it came from a woman named Ruth Collins. It would become the absolute centerpiece of the investigation into the disappearance of Elizabeth Bain. It's just a moment frozen in time, right? A face in a car window that raised way more questions than it answered.
So let's start right there with that exact moment. A sighting that should have been the key to the whole thing, but instead, it became the central point of contradiction in the entire case. Now, what's really fascinating here is the timing. Collins was absolutely positive it was 8:30 p.m. And how did she know? Well, she was rushing home to catch her favorite TV show, In the Heat of the Night, which started at 9. It's that little human detail, right? That's what gave her account so much weight. And this is the crux of it, really. Her testimony should have been the guiding star for the whole investigation. It gave them a time, a place, and a really critical circumstance. Elizabeth was with someone else, and she looked like she was in trouble.
So with a time and a place, the investigation needed a suspect. And as you see so often in these cases, they pretty quickly narrowed their focus to the one person who was closest to the victim.
The police theory was, well, pretty straightforward. Robert Baltovich had to be the guy in the driver's seat of that car with Elizabeth in her final, terrifying moments. It was a simple story, a simple narrative, but it was about to run into a very, very big problem.
And here it is. This is the problem. While police were busy building their whole theory around Baltovich being at the crime scene, they themselves were digging up evidence that proved he was somewhere else entirely.
So, let's just walk through this timeline the police themselves put together. You can see Baltovich's movements are accounted for by multiple, totally independent witnesses. He's seen arriving at 7:15, he works out for over an hour, and then, here's the kicker. At 8:30 p.m., the exact time of the Collins sighting, he's confirmed to be on campus, miles away. He just couldn't have been in two places at once. Just let that sink in for a second. The police knew that Baltovich had a verified alibi for the time of the sighting before they even knew the sighting had happened. I mean, that should have cleared him immediately, right? But their actions, they suggest a completely different story was being written.
Okay, so fast forward a week to July 5th. Police ask Baltovich to come in for a polygraph test. And this is where the investigation goes from just questionable to, frankly, baffling. Because the focus of their questions is, well, it's incredibly revealing. During the pre-test interview, the examiner, with the lead detective Stephen Reeser watching from another room, didn't just ask general stuff. No, he zeroed in on one very specific scenario. Now think about what they're doing here. They are not asking him if he did it. They're asking him to explain away the Collins sighting. They are literally building their case by putting him in that car, on that street, at that exact time, a time for which they already know he has a solid alibi. And this just perfectly illustrates the central contradiction of the case. Why would you aggressively question a suspect about being at a crime scene when you have evidence in your own files proving he wasn't there? It's a question that really cuts to the very heart of this investigation.
The police's commitment to their suspect-focused narrative becomes even more clear when you compare how they treated Ruth Collins, the eyewitness, versus how they treated the witnesses who gave Baltovich his alibi.
I mean, just look at this contrast. It's night and day. The lead detective personally goes to see Collins, even arranges a hypnosis session to try and bolster her memory. Meanwhile, the key alibi witness, Naz Tombazan, he gets a phone call from a junior officer. His statement isn't even taken for months, and most critically, his evidence was never disclosed to the defense. One testimony was being carefully cultivated, and the other one was being buried.
This goes beyond just tunnel vision. The lead detective on the case, Stephen Reeser, actually told a professional that his prime suspect was unaccounted for at the time of the crime. He knew this was untrue. He had the alibi statements in his possession. It was an active choice to shape the narrative.
And through all of this, what about the witness herself? Well, Ruth Collins never wavered, not once. In court, when they pressed her on how certain she was, her answer was perfectly clear. I am so sure. Despite everything, her conviction was absolute.
So let's just try a little thought experiment here. What if we just accept both things as true? 1, Robert Baltovich had a rock-solid alibi, and 2, Ruth Collins' detailed sighting was credible.
If both of those are true, well, it changes everything.
Because you see, the details of Collins's sighting, they actually lined up perfectly with other evidence. Elizabeth had left her driver's license at home, which makes it totally plausible someone else was driving. The car was later found right across the street, backed into a spot which is consistent with where Collins saw it. Her account wasn't just some random observation. It was a coherent piece of the puzzle.
And that leads us to the final, unavoidable question. If the police knew Baltovich couldn't have been the driver, and the evidence suggests the sighting was totally legitimate, then their investigation should have pivoted to find the real person in that car. Who was he? The investigation files held another name, Mark Bain. And unlike Robert Baltovich, he was a man who, according to the police's own records, could not account for his whereabouts at 8:30 p.m. on the night Elizabeth disappeared. This leaves a massive, troubling question mark at the center of a story that the justice system presented as having only one answer. And it really makes you wonder, what happens when the guiding star of an investigation points in a direction that nobody wants to look?